Welcome everyone to Migration. We know from a growing mountain of research and evidence that regular meditation can help improve focus and attention. It can help you cope with depression and anxiety. It can decrease the time it takes to heal from a traumatic event. It improves your memory. The list goes on and on. Now, for a lot of you, this really isn't new information. If it is, I'll add some links to a few of those studies below. But today, I want to focus on a bizarre benefit of meditation that is still really poorly understood, and that is some research has demonstrated that regular meditation can actually make you smarter. We're seeing more and more studies from reputable sources which show an increase in IQ by nearly 25%. Now, why would that be? How could essentially doing nothing make you smarter? Before we dive into the more abstract underlying reasons for this, let's start with what the science tends to agree on first. Researchers have come up with several concrete, logical reasons for high IQs among meditators. For instance, we know that 1. Meditation can harmonize the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, so the logical and the creative sides work together more efficiently. We also know it can increase the brain's alpha, theta, and delta waves, which basically translates into more creativity and cognitive functioning. Meditation appears to increase neuroplasticity, where the mind adapts to new obstacles faster and more efficiently, instead of always relying on all the same tools and methodology to problem solve. We can now clearly see from EEG scans that people who meditate regularly have all-around healthier brain functioning. So when you add all of that to improved memory, you tend to get a rise in intelligence test scores. So the science is very clear. Adding a meditation routine into your schedule can improve your overall quality of life. But I want to dive into a mechanism operating deeper than that. What's going on behind the scenes of all these improvements? A dynamic that is rarely discussed, and one I would imagine would be really difficult to put under rigorous scientific testing and to measure properly. It's a quiet, personal process you really have to witness for yourself. But once you do, you'll understand what is at the heart of meditation's ability to build a healthier mind. So, get comfortable, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and get ready for the next episode of Migration. Before we can really talk about the notion of meditation making you more intelligent, we have to first consider what that really means. What does it really mean to be more intelligent? Some people might say being smart is about storing a lot of facts in your memory. So does my computer. I wouldn't say my computer is intelligent, though. I can remember my Uncle Bill telling me when I was probably about 14 years old that if I started meditating now, I would grow to become someone who was nearly impossible to beat in an argument. And you gotta understand, to a teenage boy, that sounded pretty cool. Of course, I didn't understand what that really meant at the time, but I didn't really care. In retrospect, I'd say that he was absolutely correct, but not for the reasons I imagined when I first heard about that benefit. When I was young, I imagined maybe it meant I'd always have more facts about some topic, or I'd always just know how to say the right thing in just the right way to get the upper hand in a debate. Now today I realize it's so much deeper than that. The very idea of what it even means to win an argument with someone had to evolve. And that can be a trick even for adults who don't possess the tools to even decide who really made a better argument in, say, a political debate. We all know that many people will always tell you their guy or their side had the upper hand because, that's the team they're rooting for. And some people think that the person who insulted their opponent better was the winner of the debate, or who was nastier, who was the loudest, or the one who just looked more confident. But of course, none of that has anything to do with being right, and that's something many people never learn. The longer you meditate, the more control you exert over how much the internal dialogue rules over you, and the clearer it becomes that what you truly are is not your body or your mind, and that means that you're most certainly not a belief system. We've discussed this ad nauseum on this channel. You are a non-localized awareness, not localized in space or time, which observes all the noise that goes on inside the thinking mind. You are a force which is untethered to any thing. The more this freedom becomes your reality, it becomes increasingly harder to feel personally threatened when someone tells you your beliefs are wrong. You're not your thoughts. You're bigger than your story, your ideas, or even your opinions. What I learned along this return path was it's really about a total refocusing of your priorities and removing the ego's desires from it all. Now I'm far more interested in learning the truth than in appearing right about something. So first and foremost, you're going to start choosing your battles much more carefully. I'll only defend a position if it's something I am genuinely confident about, and it's got to be a point I feel it's important to defend. I'm no longer interested in winning or losing that debate as much as I want the truth to be revealed. That makes for a position that many people find very scary for a lot of reasons. On a psychological level, it's because they want clearly defined sides, black and white. Black is over here, white is over here. Gray areas feel like chaos to a lot of people. And by the way, yes, that perspective can indeed fuel racist views. A divisive perspective will see any debate as a fight where the person they are arguing with is on the other side of the line, and they must be wrong. And I'm over here on this side, of course, the right side. But also, we live in a capitalistic society where most of our examples of debate we've seen in our media do essentially boil down to two brands, two political sides, two products, where there is a very real financial stake in how an argument plays out. The Tucker Carlsons out there can't afford to even appear to lose an argument, because that can translate into a literal financial loss if his viewers see him as weak. If this kind of media is your only example of how an argument plays out, then your notion of what being right looks like is going to be very twisted. The bottom line is that the mere fact that you've approached this dynamic to begin with from this perspective of division makes you weaker. It makes your ability to support your position weaker. Here's why. You now see this exchange from multiple angles at once. Now you're fully open to that person convincing you that you're wrong. That change of perspective actually gives you the advantage. You move from the limited, egotistical stance of, well, someone challenged me and now I have to win this fight no matter what. I'll use any tactic I can muster to come out on top, over to, I want to know the truth more than I want my side to win, to have my ego boosted. You're no longer afraid to find out your position is wrong because you no longer identify with it. So from this new playing field, you're now watching the conversation unfold in a very different way. Now you're taking in all the available information in a holistic manner, because now you're listening to each thing that person is saying. That's the first thing. You're actually listening, paying attention to what that person is saying. Have you ever been in an argument with someone who's clearly not even listening to you? The words don't matter to them anymore because all they want is to be returned back to the position of power they imagine they belong in. As you actively listen to this person, you're asking yourself, wait, did they just really change my opinion? And if not, well, why? What is lacking in their argument for me to change my mind on this point? That mindset makes your approach so much more powerful. This is not only how you will approach debates, but how you approach new information in general. This is neuroplasticity in action. It's a way of allowing new information to come in unfiltered and allowing it to change you if necessary. Remember, the mind ruled with the iron fist of a solid black and white identity is terrified of new information changing it because subconsciously it thinks of itself essentially as a bundle of information. If I change my beliefs, I'm not going to be the same person. I'll become unrecognizable even to myself. You either embrace that or you're terrified by that. Now, let's take this conversation to an even deeper level. Meditation does something else to us that's even more abstract than that. And bear with me, this might get a bit hard to illustrate. Some of you may recall that in the video about the dark side of enlightenment, I said this. And I don't want to veer off into another tangent, but that point is something I'll save for another video entirely. So for now, I'll give you something to chew on. That dynamic I just mentioned, where the ego pulls increasingly clever tricks to convince your awareness that it's still a necessary reality, is part of a larger mechanism which is responsible for making those who meditate regularly actually more intelligent. This is kind of an abstract concept that's going it deserves its own discussion, so I'm going to do a whole other video just on that idea alone, how meditation actually ends up making you more intelligent. So as I've said, when you meditate in the way I've been suggesting on this channel, you're essentially becoming less and less identified with the noises and activity around you. You observe how your body feels, but you don't attach who you are to those sensations, nor to the thoughts swirling in your head. And you begin to instead ground yourself in that formless silence, a silence which has no real position, but only sees unity. Your identity, which really boils down to a bundle of stories, sensory stimulation, memories, and whatever information you've tossed into the box labeled with your name, it doesn't like formlessness. Once again, I'm going to speak about your identity, our ego, as if it was actually an individual sentient thing. This is only for illustration's sake. The reason meditation is so difficult, the reason so many people give up on it, is because the ego has 1,000 little tricks up its sleeve to sway your attention and your concern back over to it, instead of resting in that boundless, silent bliss of the present. There you are, breathing, doing nothing, being in the moment, and out of nowhere, there's a little hook that grabs you, and it says, hey, you can't let go. You've got that thing to worry about, and you better not stop worrying about that little thing, because then it'll overwhelm you, and you'll end up in a van down by the river, and you lose your focus with 1,000 tiny threats. The more you meditate, you start observing all these little games the identity plays on you, how it essentially bullies you into distraction. And it is a bully in a lot of ways. You start learning all its tricks, though, and the more you meditate, the better you'll get at seeing all these manipulations of the internal dialogue. So much of meditation is engaging in this game of surrendering to the present moment, of doing nothing, allowing yourself to just be, and then getting hooked again by the mind, where it tries to take you down a rabbit hole of anything really, whatever tactic works for you. You'll be sitting there perfectly quiet and content, and 20 seconds later, you're reliving an argument you had with an ex-partner 3 years ago. But the more you practice, the better you adapt, because you eventually start to learn to not be tricked by that particular hook. You'll eventually realize, for example, damn, my mind always manages to pull me from the moment when it, say, reminds me of one of the times I should have said something else during that argument. And you get better at not letting that trick lure you off balance. The mind throws some memory at you of a time you felt, say, angry or weak or awkward, and you get better at letting it pass. Now here's the trick. The ego mind will also adapt its strategies to suck you back in. It's like it says, well, shit, that distraction isn't working anymore. I need to come up with something different now, something better. I'll have to reach deeper to find something that will really mess with her. What if I try this? And something brand new will rise to the surface for you, and back and forth you go. The mind will consistently find more refined, more clever ways to trick you, to lure your attention off center, to take you out of your own source of power. Over and over, you have to notice what its new game is, and you have to overcome it. That back and forth process is what is at the core of making you more intelligent right there. This is a kind of exercise for the mind that you can't get anywhere else. Not from reading books, not from doing puzzles or study or travel or watching documentaries or learning a new skill. It's what develops neuroplasticity at the core of the physical mind. Now, I don't really personally put a lot of stock in IQ tests. I think intelligence is so complex. You can only test for individual narrow bands of what we think of as intelligence. But when it comes to the overall speed and efficiency of my mind to adapt, to problem solve and communicate, I know I'm far more intelligent than I was, say, back in college. And it has very little to do with knowledge I've acquired or the facts I've memorized. How many times have people told me, well, I just can't meditate. I always get distracted. Right, that's the point. Stop thinking that you failed if you aren't fully surrendered in a perfect state of Zen the entire time. The point is not to never get distracted. You're going to get distracted. The point is to then identify what's just happened to you, what managed to lure you this time around, and see the trick for what it was, and then return to your center. For me, the kind of tricks my mind will use to keep me trapped in thought at the mercy of the internal dialogue have now become so subtle and sneaky at this point, it's become almost kind of funny. The games my mind plays with me now are comical, really, how devious they can be. A few weeks ago, I was walking back from the grocery store across the street in the morning. I'm heading back to make breakfast when I just happened to notice how beautiful it was outside. It was sunny and it was in the mid-60s with just a little breeze coming down from the mountains, and I am just in ecstasy. I'm in the moment. I'm just taking it all in. And I start kind of thinking, breakfast can wait. I should go for a quick hike instead after I get home, and I'll drop off the groceries and I'll just do an hour hike up that ridge over to the south that I really like. But I think it's been snowing, so I should probably wear my hiking boots. It's going to get kind of wet and messy and a little muddy, which reminds me I should really get new hiking shoes for this season. Probably this weekend I should go down to that shoe warehouse down the road. If I could just find a good mid-top and a black leather, and suddenly I realize I'm at my front door. My brain managed to pull me from just enjoying being outside into making plans which ended in me shopping for shoes in my mind. And I laughed because it was a clever trick, because hiking was actually a good idea that deserved some attention. Not 10 minutes of my attention, though. It's like the ego said, oh yeah, so you like being outside. Well, instead of enjoying being outside right now, let's go on a little mental adventure where you can be outside more later. And then later, I'll let you really enjoy being in the moment. You'll notice that a lot with the mind. The moment you enter a deep state of peace, the mind will interrupt that with the promise of more peace and more tranquility later, if you'll just veer off course, and go through this little maze of thinking now. But here's the thing, later never comes. Now, I did end up going on a hike instead of making breakfast right away that day, but I found the mind that, then coming up with brand new reasons to not just enjoy that hike. You should really think about what you're doing for lunch later instead of just being in the moment. But each time you find a way to pull yourself back to where you actually are now, you win. It's the best exercise you can do for yourself. And when conflict in the world around you arises, you're now in a position to approach it with so much more focus instead of anxiety. all the many options to panic the mind offers will begin to slide off of you. When people throw confusion or hate at you, you'll get faster and faster at identifying it for what it is. You'll be able to go, oh yeah, my mind used to try to suck me into that dark corner of shame and regret with that kind of trick. I know that game. You are so much more on top of even the most insane situations life tosses your way. And now that you really don't care about winning or losing an argument, yeah, it becomes really hard for people to get the upper hand over you in conflict. When you know your own mind's tactics and manipulations, you can immediately see it when someone else's mind is trying to overpower you on some level. When you combine the benefits to your mental and emotional health with an all-around greater intellectual capacity meditation offers, it's easy to see why I say it's the most important skill to practice, and you're never too young to start. I swear, if I had one wish for our education system, it would be to start teaching meditation in kindergarten, if not sooner. No, not with a religious or a spiritual spin on it. I'm talking the basics of learning to sit and be contained within your own space. And on the flip side, you're also never too old to learn either. It's not necessarily going to be easy. When the mind has been allowed to control your attention and pull it in any direction it chooses for years and years, it's going to be like suddenly telling a toddler no for the first time. It'll throw tantrums, it'll resist, it's going to fight back. But so what? Let it throw a fit. You're not the mind. So I don't care if you're 85 years old and you've been told you've got 6 months to live. I'd spend as much of that time in a meditative state as I could. Don't say, yeah, but I'm going to die soon anyway, so what's the point? The point is always for the moment. That's all you'll ever have. Plus you'll find that even after your body is dead, there is still only the present moment. So that is as far as we're going to dive down that particular rabbit hole for today. So write me any questions or comments, of course, in the comments section below. And know that I take your ideas seriously. I take your questions seriously, assuming you have a serious question. Please, if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe to my channel. It costs nothing, and each subscriber really helps boost my channel. So until next time, nothing but love and peace to all of you. Bye bye.